When you hear someone say, oh, these engines are great, or these engines are terrible, there's a lot of different ways that you would normally judge an engine. Some people judge engines by how much power they make. Some people judge engines by how much you can tune them and how much more power you can squeeze out of them. Some people judge engines by how reliable they are, or how fuel efficient they are, or how expensive the parts are, or how expensive the repairs are. But I don't do any of those things. I judge an engine by how they treat their owners, how the average person's ownership experience is when owning a car with said engine. And in that category, this is at the bottom of the list. The BMW or Mini Cooper N14 ran from 2007 through 2010 model year, and since this engine is from a 2013, it is actually the N18. I'm not quite sure why they didn't call this the N14 TU or technical update, but this is considered the N18, which is supposed to be a modified or revised version of the N14. Let's see if they actually fixed any of the common problems. No, not at all. Not the rule. This is the engine out of a 2013 Mini Cooper S, and it has 133,000 miles on it, which is very high for a it's very high. It's very high mileage for one of these engines. Now, that doesn't mean it's high for those cars. It just means that cars with 130,000 miles on it typically have the second or third engine by that point in time. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't stay on top of them and they won't treat you well if you maintain them very well, but the average person does not have a good experience when owning a car with one of these. BMW's N18 is actually a French engine, more commonly known as the Prince by PSA, although BMW did change a few things on it. This is a 1.6 liter direct injected turbocharged 4-cylinder, and it makes 181 horsepower in its current configuration, which is pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good for one of these, and that's the only thing I can say about these engines that is actually pretty good, because, well, most engines, or I would say the majority of engines out there, have one or two common failure points, and as long as you take care of those ahead of time, you see no issues. All of the failure points on an N14 start here, and they end here. The whole thing is bad. Just throw the whole thing away. So these engines have really bad fuel system components. The high-pressure fuel pump is a notorious failure. Do not buy a used one. Do not buy a cheap one. Only buy good, genuine, branded ones. If you don't do that, they can run lean, and they can melt pistons or burn valves. They also consume oil, which helps them burn valves even better. They also have a timing chain cassette that just falls apart, just crumbles apart. Sometimes it runs out of time and it stops running. Sometimes the plastic clogs the sump and it starves it of oil. And I'm not done, because they have a really bad oil filter housing design. It's really hard to access the oil filter. They also have a really goofball belt tensioner situation. I really don't understand what's stuck in here. But regardless of all of those things, that's not why this engine's on my stand. No, because I don't know if you can see, but this engine is full of goo. Milkshake brought this engine to my yard. This stuff has been oozing out of this engine since I've had it in my possession. It also totally wrecked the delivery truck that brought it to me. I don't know when it will stop, but I have a suspicion that we're going to find all kinds of it on the inside. The very first thing I'd like to do is see if this engine turns over and how it feels. Oh, it had a really bad spot. And it's currently crapping itself. That's rainwater. Maybe this sat outside. Maybe that's what's wrong with it. My question is, if I'm turning this over and it's building compression, why is it pushing water out of the oil filter housing? Let's go look at that. So I do think this thing was rained in, which could explain the muck coming out of it. But that is not normal. That should not be happening. Oh, it's getting chunky. So what I think is happening is there might be a slight breach. It just won't stop. There might be a slight breach between the compression part of the engine, the combustion chamber, and the cooling system. Okay, I'm done playing around. Let's get this thing ripped apart. Well, I hope nobody just ate dinner. Might have to release this video a little early or late. All right, let's pop the plugs out. One quick thing I noticed is that the valve cover has this stamping on it right here. URO, I think someone told me that stands for you replace often, which seems like a terrible marketing slogan. All right, let's pull some spark plugs. That's not good. Tapioca.
Marmalade.
Frappuccino.
So every single one of these has the same jam that was coming out of the engine when I was cranking it on the spark plugs. This is going to be bad. All right, let's turn it over again and see if it oozes the goo again. Yep, it still does. Oh, that just went all over the floor. Something else I noticed here, this friction tensioner, which this rides the crank pulley at all times, and this pulls it in depending on temperature, and it either engages or disengages the water pump. Does that turn the pump? It does. So perhaps this is why it's pumping that crap. Excuse me, junk. Let's go ahead and get the remains of this harness out of the way. Oh, it's very well zip tied. Let's get my wire cutters. What do you think, I'm going to cut the harness? I don't cut things that have value. I don't know if the harness is cut already. I didn't do that. But we're going to pull the intake manifold next. Oh man, there's so much gross stuff. We're gonna have to get all this disconnected. Oh, don't want to break it. There we are. This is convoluted. Vacuum lines. Got some parts off. Yuck. Before we go down the intake ports, let's get the rest of this harness out of the way here. Let's just clean this up a bit. These are pesky. Yep, all ick. Lots of ick. Let's go set that over here in the corners. And that's not good. That's also not good. That's not good. And that's worse. So a whole bunch of bad. All right, now it's time to peel the valve cover off. Can't tell if that's a 10. It feels like that's an 8. Let's try it. Oh, it's got some junk in there. They both do. What the? Let's go fishing. Yeah, I need to get the air to get this stuff out. Let's go get the air. Cover your nose. Hey, there's bolts there. She's blue, and let's see how terrible or great this looks. Oh man. Oh man. Well, that's bad. That's terrible. Yikes. There's more than one thing wrong with this engine, but we knew that these engines have more than one thing that does go wrong. The overwhelming thing you'll notice is probably the sheer volume of rust from moisture in the crankcase. Tons of rust along this cam and the valve train. This is a Valvetronic system. This is all rusted up. It looks terrible. And then you'll, of course, notice the patented detaching chain guide hanging out right here. Who knows where that really was before I pulled the valve cover, but that's where it is now. And if I look a little closer, there are more pieces of it down in here. So overall, I'm going to give this an F sharp. Here's a better look at the sheer volume of rust in here. It's bad. I've seen flood engines that look way better than this. And then that piece of chain guide is right back here, just hanging out. Of course, this piece is probably the part that runs along this bridge guide right here. It's unnecessary. All right, now we're going to remove the high pressure fuel line and the high pressure fuel pump. And now the vacuum pump. Oh, need blue for that one. All right, now it's time to start stripping some stuff off the front of the engine. We'll start with this harness. Now the friction tensioner. Really doesn't, oh, there's a bolt in there, that's why. So why is this not fitting that well? Way better. And the water pump pulley. Bracket. Crank pulley. Blue. Now this bracket. The next thing we're going to do is remove these T45 plugs, which give us access to the pins that hold the timing cassette in place. That one was loose. That's not good. These are actually the pins themselves. So before I go any further, we're going to get that loose so that we can pull this hub off so we can slide the whole timing side out. Please. All right, so that's on the bottom of the chain. We need to get these out next, and I guess I forgot to take the tensioner out too. Let's do that next. We'll doing everything out of order. Get the tensioner out. Well, that still looks like it's okay. I have a feeling bad things are going to happen, but we're going to do it anyway. Oh, wow. This little guy, pretty strong. All right, so this is pretty loose in here. We can slide that out. That looks important. All right, now I need to remove what's left of this bridge guide. And then this should pull up all the chain guide. Where did the chain guides are still in the engine? This is, oh, is this the chain dispenser? This comes out. It does come out. There's a way it comes out. I'm still working it out though. I think we're going to get part of it out here in a second. I will say it's mostly in one piece. There's one of them. This one still feels like there's a tensioner on it. Did I miss something? Oh, you know what it is? It's the dipstick, because the dipstick runs through the actual guide. I always forget that. I've torn down several of these. It's much easier when everything, yuck. So that's broken badly. Here's the timing system. Of course, broken guys, they look original to me. They're chipped. These are supposed to be stuck together using pieces here. Here. There's still more pieces in this engine, I promise you. There's still that one piece in the cylinder head. We'll try to fish that out later. But yeah, so far, at least 2 problems. Sorry for the interruption, but many of you know that I have one or a number slightly larger than one number of project cars that I like to work on in my non-existent spare time. And I love making videos on these cars. I know I get a lot of requests for updates on these cars, like the Carrera behind me. But for me to add a camera to every single thing I do to my cars means that I have to set up every single shot. I have to make sure my audio is good. And I have to edit it. And then I have to publish it. All of it collectively means that when I film my projects, they take a considerable amount more time than if I were to not film my projects. Now, for this channel, I will always film my projects. You will always get to see the new acquisitions. You'll always get to see the major updates. But I know a lot of you guys want to see more. And as of late, my wife and I have been talking, and she has decided to kind of devote her channel to some of these updates, some of the things behind the scenes on the channel. So I'm going to leave a link to her channel. You'll get to see me pulling the engine out of this thing. I think that's the most recent video she published. So if you'd like to see more of that, check her channel out. I'll leave a link above my head or over here. One of these directions will be a link to her channel, and I really appreciate it.
All right, now we're going to take the thermostat housing off. I noticed it's got a worm clamp on here. That doesn't go there. No, it didn't even come off at the part that I thought it was going to. So when this came out, I noticed that's literally falling apart. It's broken. Where's the rest of that? And I look in the block, and it's not really there. So what happened? All right, so I'm not going to be pulling both cams out of this because of the Valvetronic system. I'm not going to pull this apart, but I am going to get at least the exhaust cam out so we can check the condition of the journals. So it's time to cram the cam cramps loose. Well, the cylinder head doesn't really look as bad as I expected. I mean, the rollers, some of them are okay, some of them are really, they're gone. I mean, none of this is going to be reused. This is all too rough, but the journals aren't really torn up. The cam is, it's kind of junk. Yeah, it's absolutely pitted. The journals, some scoring not bad. I expected worse. Water does not make the best lubricant. The cam caps, yeah, it's not as bad as I expected. Well, there is a external head bolt that I can only access when I remove this solenoid. So we're going to go and get that out. Normally these are good at catching flakes of bearing material that are suspended in the oil, but it caught some milkshake. Let's go ahead and get that bolt loose. And there's two more bolts over here. I'm going to try to do this with my ratchet. I don't know how, or I don't remember how tight these are. Yeah, I think we'll be okay. All right, I think that's all the head bolts. All right, let's lift the head, see what happens here. Well, this has been hot, which we suspected that anyway, but super duper hot. And so much, wow. What is this? What? I have no idea what I just pulled out of there. So guys, what What is this? What is that? That's an O-ring. You know what? This is the O-ring that fits that broken pipe that goes into the water pump. That's it. And it looks like it was able to make it through the water pump, and it made it about this far, because that's right here. So it just traveled its way. Huh. Well, that's a new one for me. I've never seen that before. And all the junk in here. I wonder if this is like kind of some sort of plastic. It's pasty. I'm not going to smell it. Nope, we're not going to play that game. But yeah, that's pretty terrible. I'm not really sure where this engine got so much milkshake. I mean, it was just constantly pumping and pumping. I don't understand how there's still so much in here. And I think the crankcase is drained. We're going to find that out shortly. But you can definitely tell this thing has been cooked. You can see it was breached. Head gasket right here between those two. Really hot between those two. I'm really surprised it's not torched between the two. And it's got all this, it's gray matter. I mean, it's literally, it's gray matter. I've seen a lot of blown head gasket engines, but this is pretty high up there as far as damage is concerned. I'm going to give this a brake cleaning bath in a second, but I wanted to show you before I did. I don't see any burned valves. That's not burned valves. That's not burnt, don't worry. I mean, it still could be, but that's not the way it looks if it's burned. You can see it's been hot all through the center of this head. I bet this cylinder head is as flat as the earth. It's a joke. It's a joke. There's a head gasket. You see it's breached right there, right there, right there. But I don't see, oh, there, yeah, right there. It's breached cooling jacket, multiple places. Yeah, this one has been formally overheated. So normally is a time for some science, but the results will be skewed because of the fluid in the cylinder. So I'm going to just turn this upside down and let this drain the milkshake. Oh, it doesn't want to go any further that way because it's got an oil filter housing on it. We're just going to let it do that for a little bit. Actually, you know what? Let's just get this out of the way. We're just going to get the oil filter housing out, and then we can rotate it all the way. Oh, more chunky stuff. I'm just going to leave that in there. I don't really care. Let it do its thing. And let's rotate this. This is going to be appetizing. Wow, it's super chunky. There's a little bit of oil in there. We're just going to let it do that for a few hours. First, the cylinder head. So I took the liberty to wire wheel where I would think they would crack, which is between the spark plug and a valve seat, or over here I wire wheeled between a coolant jacket and a combustion chamber, where it clearly was pressurizing the cooling system with compression. I don't see any cracks. That's the only good news here, is I don't see any cracks. That doesn't mean it's not cracked, it just means that I can't see them currently. This passage was completely plugged up, and you can definitely tell exhaust gases or combustion gases were going this way, they were going this way, they were going all the ways they're not supposed to go. Pretty terrible. But the head gasket tells a better story. So you can see every single place where it has breached, and if you look really close, nope, not like that, come on now. If you look really close, see that little hole there? It's a little damage there. Totally blown out there. So how hot does it have to get for an MLS gasket like this, multi-layer steel, to do this? What do you guys think? How hot was this? All right, we're still draining, but we're going to rotate this back so we can wipe out the bores and get a good gander at them. Oh man. I wish I could tell you it looked better than it did before, but it doesn't. Let's see, I'm just gonna park it kind of like this and spray it out with some brake clean. All right, let's see how clean we can make this. So the bores actually look pretty decent as far as scoring. There's definitely some pitting. But when an engine gets super hot, the pistons can swell up and you'll see a lot of aluminum transfer, which I'm not seeing here. Not yet, anyway. The pistons are a little cleaner than they normally are because they've been steam cleaned with hot coolant. There might be some damage down there. Either way, it's not as bad as I expected. And now it's time for one of my favorite Incubus albums. Alright, so I don't think we have any disconnecting rods. Those two both go to the top of the bore. And so do those. So I don't think we have any bent rods either. Pass the test. And now it's time to pull the water pump, which it does look like it may have been leaking out of the weep hole, which is at the top of the pump. It spins okay, but we don't really know what happened here because this thing could have gotten so hot that it ruined the seal in the pump. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the road? Let's go ahead and pull this pump. Give it a little tap. So that's pretty bad. And I think all this gray matter here is actually part of that composite pipe. I think that's what we found in the block, basically in the cooling jackets in the block, because that's all built up around here. That's a coagulated coolant. I would not trust this water pump. I think this water pump, I think it's junk. While we're here, we'll get this vacuum reservoir. And this bracket. Whoa there. All right, we're going to roll this thing over so we can pull the lower oil pan. That didn't take very much. Ooh. Oh, hey, you know all the pieces of timing guide we were looking for? We found them. That doesn't go there. All of that comes with me. This is all timing guide, and I'm sure there's going to be more in the pickup because that's where it goes. I mean, that's not where it goes, but that's where it goes, if you know what I mean. Well, that is full to the brim of muck. So we're going to have to rotate it back over, but we did find a whole bunch of, timing components in here. And it looks like this has been, it does not look like it's the correct sealant to me. What do you guys think? I know there's some of you techs out there that work on these all the time. Has this been off before? I don't see whiz wheel marks or two different kinds of sealant, but I see too much sealant. Way too much sealant. And the inside of the pan, the deceased timing guide. We're just going to not disturb that. All right, let's rotate this. See if we can drain some more goo out of it. It's super ploppy. Oh, and it looks kind of sparkly in places. This is just going to keep going on. I could literally let this sit overnight and it would just never stop. All right, let's go back over. We'll go the other way. This is the dirtiest teardown I've had in a long time. All right, we need to remove the chain cover, which is this one right here. I don't think there's bolts. I think you just, there we are. My tools are never going to recover from this. So now we can take, see, can I get this off this? Does this come off this? No. So we're going to have to take that out, even though that spins. Now, for those that are wondering, this is the water pump. I mean, okay, it started out as an oil pump, but now it's kind of a water and oil pump. Let's see if we can get this off. Oh, hold on here. This is about to be terrible. Let's go the other way. Oh, just pooped all over my floor. That was a mistake. All right. Well, now it sucked all of the muck through it. It's on my floor. All right, let's actually try to get this off. We're gonna stick this in here. That worked pretty good, might I say. All right, let's see if we can get this harness through for the oil pump. Should be pretty easy, I think. All right, did that help me at all? Kind of. Let's just give it a little taparoo. Yeah, that worked real good. Perfect. All right, let's get the oil pump, out of here. Ooh, there's some chunky stuff in here. So what is this? Oh, that's all guide. That's literally minced timing guide. There's lots of it in here. It's been broken for a while. All right, now we're going to pull the oil pump apart. Oh, there's actually some actual water in here. That is, that's pretty gross. Why did I do that? I should have done that over the oil pan or my drain pan. Now I have this big pile of muck here. All right, let's kind of get some stuff wiped down so we can take a look. Well, it's really not too torn up. I can't get it clean enough, though. There's not enough brake clean in this house to get this cleaned up. But it's really not bad. There's just enough oil in the water, or excuse me, just not enough water in the oil to create a problem with this. Time to remove the windage tray. All right, now we're going to start zipping the bolts that hold the perimeter of the bed plate on before we get to the main cap bolts. There's a couple here at the back. I'm going to have to do something different for that. Let's get the crank sensor out. There's a couple bolts here at the back. Helps to have the right size socket every time. Let's try that again. Got to neutral drop it. Now we need to gain access to two more of these. One right here and one right there. These are the main cap bolts. Not really a big fan of this situation, but it is what it is. They gotta come apart. Just make a little entry point in them. And you take a nice chisel driver here. Well, sometimes There we are. Will you just go in? There, we did it. So now we get to see if my little stubby impact will take these out. I'm impressed. I mean, they're pretty tight. All right, we're gonna break these loose the old-fashioned way with an air impact. Well, actually, we need to take that extension out. It doesn't really fit this one, but we made it. All right, let's see if old Blue here can give us a hand. I don't know if there's a place to pry. Probably is. Just gotta figure out where that is. I don't see a place to pry. Nice. You can always pry off the engine stand. It's worked for us in the past. And it worked for us in present time. Yummy. Now we're going to crack the rod caps loose. Give it a little... Oh, it's gonna be like that, huh? I might have to just do it this way. I think there's some rust on all of these. First rod cap is off. All right, all the rod cap bolts are out. That one does not want to come out too easily. That did it. Well, unfortunately, my lovely Panasonic GH7 decided to stop recording 1 second after I pressed the button, and I didn't know. It's a great camera. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and pluck the crank out now that the rods and pistons are out, and unfortunately I did not get footage on that. All right, let's take a look at these bearings. They're all worn. They're not chewed up. Well, they're not terrible. The main bearings though, those look pretty nice except for that front one. The front one has some pretty significant wear. The rest of these bearings, not terrible. And the rods and pistons, well, they cleaned up pretty well. There's only so much brake clean a guy wants to use on something like this. There's some skirt wear on all of them. Not terrible. I didn't see any sections of melted piston on any of these. I don't think it got hot enough for these to swell, or maybe it just had other outlets. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It's kind of worn through the coating there. They're not bad though. We've seen overheated engines with way more damage than this. They just weren't as absolutely disgusting. And the crankshaft is not great. Oil does not make the best lubricant. And it definitely caused a little bit of damage to every journal on the crank. I think it's a salvageable crank, but it may not be worth the cost of polishing. I'll have to check before this thing ends up in the bin. I don't think this block's going to be valuable enough to warrant trying to resell this in its current condition. Knowing what it's been through, I think this is going to end up in the scrap bin. There's some engines that are definitely worth the machine work, but this is like a $300 or $400 block on a great day. And I sold a much nicer one for like $400 just a couple months ago. So I think this one's going to end up in the scrap bin. So you might be thinking that this was a really bad example of an N18 to judge all of these N18s by, and that the person that owned or worked on this car was really bad at wrenching. They used the cheapest parts possible, incorrect repair procedures, and likely this car was ill-maintained and a lot of warning signs were ignored, and it could have been driven hard too. I 1000% agree with that. I think this engine was very poorly maintained, and that is why, one of the reasons why it failed. But the N14 and the N18, and I'm going to lump both of those together because they're basically the same engine, they don't tolerate this abuse like other engines. And I think the similar proportions of people that are bad at taking care of cars, finding mechanics, etc., bought these cars as everything else. The problem is they don't tolerate it. These engines are not robust. They don't tolerate abuse, neglect, deferred maintenance. They don't handle that very well at all. And that is why used engine prices for these things are expensive, especially compared to other similar vehicles from the same era that the engines are considerably cheaper on. These engines are $2,500 plus, and then you figure you got to do the timing cassette, and you got to do the oil filter housing, and you got to do all of the things. You're going to be $4,000 in it, $5,000 in repairing one of those if you get a really cheap person to work on it. And then if you want somebody that knows what they're doing, you're going to pay even more. Now, I'm not going to totally condemn fixing N14 or N18 powered vehicles. I can't do it because I own some really terrible to own vehicles, but I enjoy wrenching. So if your Cooper S is your thing and you like maintaining it and you like keeping it on the road, then more power to you. I'm happy to see people wrench on their cars instead of just replacing it with something else. However, for people that don't wrench and people that don't know, don't buy one of these cars. Don't do it. It might seem like a nice looking car, it might drive great, but it's going to hurt the wallet really bad. Now, this particular engine doesn't really have a lot of good reusable parts. Some of the parts I wouldn't sell strictly out of fear that they will cause another engine to fail, like the fuel system components. And then some components I wouldn't sell for reuse because they're no good. The cylinder head is probably shaped like a banana. I don't trust the block deck. And the crankshaft might be the sole survivor here because while it's not perfect, it might be worth getting polished and reusing. But its value might be pretty low too, so I'm not quite sure. But if you'd like to buy any parts out of this engine for your desk, please don't try to reuse some of this stuff. I'm going to leave our email in the video description. It is much easier to email us and buy the parts from the teardowns because typically those don't make it to our website as fast. So if you want to go to our website and check out the parts cars we've been getting in, I've been getting lots of cool stuff in. I've been updating it every single week. You can go to Importapart.com and peruse our inventory. There's even a part request tab that you can fill out and let us know what it is that you're chasing. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown as always. I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.